Welcome, welcome. We're so excited to be here to kick off this new webinar series. All our sessions are about strategies for creating calm and connected classrooms. So thank you so much for taking time out to be here with us this evening. We'd love it if you could share in the chat what grades you teach or work with. We're curious what kinds of teachers and educators and leaders we have with us. So share in the chat, what grades do you teach or work with? We'd love to know. A good range. Wow. Awesome. Got some principals, teachers, pre-K, high school. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. This is great. So my name is Kristen Vincent. I am an author, an educator, and right now I serve as the Director of Marketing at the Center for Responsive Schools. And with me is Jane Kofi, who is our Director of Program Development for Responsive Classroom. And we're really excited to be here with you tonight to talk about how to bully-proof your classroom. So we're going to use the Q&A feature for questions, and Jane will monitor that behind the scenes and answer questions as best as she can. So we're going to get right into it. So we're going to talk about bullying. We're going to begin talking about bully proofing with talking about bullying. And there are many definitions of bullying. However, all of the definitions have several key characteristics in common. And one of them is that bullying is one-sided, meaning there's an imbalance of power, and bullying behavior hurts and humiliates the person who's being targeted. Sometimes bullying can go on for years, and sometimes it begins and ends within a span of a few weeks. Even a one-time act can establish or maintain dominance and cause harm. But ultimately, what sets bullying apart is that it's all about power. It's about gaining power, asserting it, and maintaining it. So a child who bullies sees assertion of power as desirable. This is how they are getting attention, and this is how they think they can maybe rise in the social hierarchy or get even more power. And bullying does take many forms, including insults, maybe damaging belongings, hurting with words or with physical acts. And bullying can also be online. So here are some types of bullying. Bullying can be direct. So it can be directly putting hands on somebody else or name calling or speaking to them in a really mean or hurtful way right to their face. Bullying can be indirect. So it could be just excluding. It could be spreading rumors. It can also be in person or online. So in person can be physical, social, verbal, and online or digital, we call that cyberbullying. And research shows that bullying behavior can start as early as preschool or kindergarten, where children begin to establish those power relationships and dynamics. So who participates in bullying? There's a couple roles when it comes to bullying behavior. And the first one is we have a student who's doing the bullying. And this is someone who has power or wants more power. So in the past, children who bullied were often described as outcasts or on the fringes. And however, recent studies show that children who bully can even be the popular students with high self-esteem. So other studies show that students who engage in bullying behavior fall in the middle of the social hierarchy, and they may use bullying as a way to achieve a higher status. But it's always someone who has power or wants power. That is the characteristic, the main characteristic of someone who is participating in bullying behavior. Also, when we're talking about bullying, we have a target of the bullying, and that is a vulnerable student. So all children can be bullied, all adults, all people actually are subject to bullying, but some are more frequently targeted than others. So children who are shy or less assertive or maybe lack the ability to protect themselves can be especially vulnerable. Differences can increase the risk of bullying. So whether that's a difference in appearance or behavior, even things like family income level or a student with unusual interests or abilities, that can set them apart. And those differences can lead someone who's looking for power to make that student their target. And it's important to note that sometimes students move between these roles. So sometimes a student can be engaged in bullying behavior and instigating mean behavior. And then maybe later in the day or later that week or at some other time in their lives, they can become the target of bullying. And then the third role that happens with bullying is that there's usually an audience. So the important thing to know is that bullying is a social act and it almost always involves an audience. And I saw a statistic that said 85% of incidents of bullying involve or include bystanders. So I thought that was really interesting. Children who bully are seeking power or attention from others around them, not just the targeted child. So they're looking for that audience to give them the power or the attention they're seeking. And bystanders can play many roles. So sometimes they can join in. They might be encouraging the student doing the bullying behavior. They might just be passively watching or maybe actively helping the target. So helping that child who's being bullied. So lots of different roles and ways that people participate in and around bullying behavior. Where does bullying happen? When we talk about bullying in school, bullying usually takes place in the less supervised areas of the school. So that would be the playground, cafeteria, school bus, restrooms, hallways, stairwells. However, bullying can carry over into the classroom. And there are studies about bullying happening right in front of adults, and the adults just don't see it or don't realize it's bullying behavior and don't realize that it's happening. So maybe it started on the school bus or the playground, but it can carry over into the classroom and happen in a way that's sort of under the radar. Bullying also takes place in virtual environments, and we know that there's cyberbullying and bullying online through online video games, social media, and via texting, where kids are social in a digital space. So what does it mean to bully-proof a classroom? So since bullying thrives on social acceptance, we want to create an environment where bullying behaviors are less likely to happen. So the idea is that we create schools and classrooms where kindness and safety are prioritized. We want to build classroom communities where everyone feels valued and included. So one of the things we can do is help students build strong, positive relationships with each other and the teachers. So in the responsive classroom approach, we use strategies like morning meeting and responsive advisory meeting, the get to know you games and activities that I'm sure all of you were involved in at the start of the school year. Those are all ways to model, teach, and practice positive behaviors. I know a lot of schools also hold all school meetings, and that's a great way to gather together your whole school community to set those norms, to practice kindness, practice listening to each other, all building those positive relationships. And then another thing we want to do to bully-proof our classroom is establish rules that guide students towards kind and friendly behavior. So one of the things we do is we create rules with our students. So we want to involve students in deciding what behaviors are going to help us all do our best learning. And we state those rules in the positive. So we are naming what we want to see and what we want to feel and what we want to do in our classroom that's going to help each other. And then we help students understand how to apply those rules. So what do those rules look like on the playground? What do they look like in the cafeteria? And so we help students apply them to a range of school situations, and we can use role play to do that. We can use problem solving meetings, and we can do that through interactive modeling. So really, when we talk about bully proofing a classroom, the goal is to create classrooms where social power comes from kindness and inclusion instead of mean, hurtful behaviors. So I've been doing a lot of talking, so I'd love to hear from you in the chat. And I want to know, in your experience, what's one of the most important ingredients for having a safe and kind classroom for you? So you can share in the chat, just make sure it's set to everyone, and let us know what's one of the most important ingredients for having a safe and kind classroom. Yep, I'm seeing things like clear expectations, understanding the expectations, modeling kindness, kind behavior, using morning meeting. These are great. Creating a safe space, making sure kids have a place to take risks, teaching conflict resolution, getting to know families. That's really important as well, because sometimes the bullying can happen outside of school, but it spills into school. And so you need that strong partnership with parents to help solve these problems. Practicing, for sure. You have to practice all these skills. Yep. Excellent ideas. Great. Thanks for sharing all of that. Oh, changing out work groups. That makes sense. So you want students to have a chance to work with a variety of classmates to get to know each other and build positive relationships with everyone in the class, for sure. So one of the things we talk about in when we're thinking about bullying and preventing bullying is gateway behaviors. And gateway behaviors are subtle acts of disrespect or meanness. And we call them gateway behaviors because they are a gateway to bullying. So these are the little stepping stones before a student displays real intent behind bullying. So bullying rarely shows up out of nowhere. And there are often small moments of unkind behavior or small patterns of meanness, I'll say, that can happen before a student can report that they're being bullied. So small moments of unkind behavior can grow into patterns of exclusion or meanness, and then that makes students feel unsafe at school. So noticing and addressing these small gateway behaviors protects a positive classroom culture. So it is a way that we can bully-proof our classrooms. And noticing and addressing these small acts of behavior that's unkind teaches students that kindness is a non-negotiable value. So we are going to be kind in this classroom. We're going to be kind to each other. And as a teacher, you can step in and model that, give students a chance to try again if they are using unkind words, and teach them that we are going to be kind to each other. That's how we take care of each other. So this does mean that adults need to be aware, we need to be present, and we need to be watching, and we need to be proactive. So the power of observation is really important for us as adults in a school. We want to watch for clues. We want to listen for clues. And then we want to step in and stop those small, mean behaviors before they escalate into something that becomes bigger. It's like stopping a small problem before it becomes a big problem. Some examples of gateway behaviors in school would be students eye rolling or sighing or mocking and making fun and teasing someone. And sometimes that can happen student to student. So like right in their face, you'll see someone roll their eyes or making fun, or it'll happen behind someone's back. And an interesting way to think about this is it's always the right thing to step in and stop those behaviors because we want to teach kindness. We want to teach patterns of positive behavior. It's also important to step in because if you're unsure if these two students or groups of students who are engaged in maybe eye rolling and teasing each other, if you're unsure if there is an imbalance of power, it could be bullying. Bullying has to do with an imbalance of power and someone's trying to have power over another. There are times when eye rolling and teasing is developmentally appropriate. So I'm thinking about those middle school teachers out there who see this a lot. And there are times when that is a like normal interaction between two students who are in the same grade, same age, and probably friends in the neighborhood. But it's when it's a sixth grader and an eighth grader, and one student's having fun and the other isn't. That would be bullying because the older student might be trying to have power over the younger. So that's an important thing to look for when you're looking for these gateway behaviors is there an imbalance of power? But again, we want to have positive behavior in our classrooms and schools, so we're going to step in when we see this. So when we see students whispering insults about a classmate, we're going to tell them that we use kind words in this classroom, or kindness is what we do here in this school. You might see someone taking someone's snack or their jacket or their materials or their belongings. So grabbing something out of their locker and running down the hall and laughing and then being like, I'm just kidding, and giving it back. Over time, that could turn into something really hurtful. But again, we're going to want to step in and say, we don't take other people's belongings without asking. We don't go into other people's lockers. You're just going to set the expectation right away when you see it. Excluding a peer from play or conversation is also a gateway behavior. So cliques and creating those little groups on the playground that everyone's going to go use the swings and tell certain students they can't. Pulling a group of students aside. So one student pulls some to the side to have a whispering conversation, specifically leaving out another student. And even when you see students brush up against another student or knock them into the lockers and say, oh, it was by accident. But maybe it wasn't. And so we're not sure, but we want to stop that behavior from happening because that could lead to someone getting hurt, or over time, it could lead to a pattern of behavior that we don't want. It's not kind to do that. So these gateway behaviors can escalate into more serious aggression if they're ignored. So we want to step in and stop these small, mean behaviors before it becomes a larger problem or before it becomes actual bullying. So that's a little bit about gateway behaviors. And we know that bullying can also happen digitally. So we have cyberbullying that happens through digital devices and online platforms. And again, this is when there's an imbalance of power. So, older students with younger students, a student who is maybe perceived as weaker, or, students out to hurt somebody else. So it could take the form of sending or posting or sharing harmful or false or mean content. It could include the spreading of private information. Maybe the intention is to embarrass someone or cause humiliation. Cyberbullying often feels anonymous and indirect. The person cyberbullying may not see the harm they're causing because they're not face-to-face. They're just behind a keyboard, behind a phone. And the thing about cyberbullying is it can happen anytime, anywhere. Cyberbullying can be constant and its effects can really disrupt a student's well-being, and it can spill over into a classroom and disrupt a classroom community. So the cyberbullying is persistent because we have devices, our devices are always with us. And so that cyberbullying can follow students around much more than something maybe that happens just in our schools. So I see a lot of questions coming through the question and answer. I think that's great. And I see some great comments in the chat. And so I'm wondering if you could share in the chat with us, what are some of those digital spaces that seem to create the biggest challenges for your students when it comes to experiencing bullying or even mean behavior in general online? So what are the apps, or is it online video games? Oh, here we go. Yeah, is it Snapchat? Yep, I see that in there. A lot of these digital platforms have social tools. They've been designed to be social, but in that unsupervised social environment, bullying can happen, or even just mean and hurtful behaviors can come through there. Yeah, Roblox. Video game chats, the chat feature of that. Yep, TikTok, Snapchat, the DMs, the instant messaging on all the platforms, for sure. Especially also group text where you can add people to the group conversation and make a group conversation, include, exclude, or say something about someone who's in the chat and everyone sees it all at once. Yep, definitely. Thank you for sharing those. So some warning signs of cyberbullying, we want to keep an eye out for it. It might not be happening during the school day, but it can be happening outside of the school day, and then it spills over into the relationships in the classroom and the school. So things that we might look for in a school is a student who shields their screen quickly or closes an application quickly as you walk by. So if they're allowed to have, I don't know, Chromebooks, laptops, iPads. I know that some middle schools and high schools allow students to have their phones. We're not going to get into those policies tonight. We just still don't have time for that. But sometimes schools do allow that. And so you might see a student who like quickly, shuts down an application or puts their phone away, or a group gathered around an electronic device and they're laughing and it may seem malicious. Or a student who's looking at a device who seems upset or sad. Um, and then a student who has a device or has been asked to, accomplish some work on the device who doesn't want to be on the device. And so you would want to check in and ask some questions and just be really curious about what's going on. It might be checking in with parents to see what's going on, but just keep an eye out for it. We might not always see it in schools because of policies about devices and things, but we need to look out for it. And then some bully-proof strategies. So one of the most important things we can do is model kindness. We want to avoid labeling children as bullies and as victims to not trap them in those roles. So students can certainly have bullying behavior, but we don't want to label them as bullying. Their behavior is in this moment of time is a bullying behavior, but it doesn't mean that that child needs that label as a bully. So we want to use action-focused language like bullying behavior or person doing the bullying or person being bullied. This approach avoids blame and reduces stereotypes and keeps the door open for positive change. We always want to give students a second chance. We also want to practice the skills that promote empathy. So we're going to practice and model active listening, asking thoughtful questions, perspective taking, reflection. We're going to build these skills throughout the day. So while we're not, specifically tying it to maybe behavior or maybe, anti-bullying, we're going to practice these skills all day long. Even when we're learning math and science and social studies, we can practice active listening and asking thoughtful questions so that we can build relationships with students. And then one of the things you'll want to do is teach students how to report bullying. And I know that many schools have policies, many districts, many states have policies around bullying and how to report it. But what we want to do is make sure students know that they should report mean and harmful or dangerous behaviors to a responsible adult and encourage them to do it right away, because we don't want it to escalate into something that's more difficult to intervene to. So we want to use the word report instead of tattling. And I know a lot of first and second grade, maybe third grade teachers are doing a lot of teaching about what is tattling and what is reporting and what behaviors need to rise. And that is where the students are at, and they are learning how to balance that. But I think as adults, we should be open to hearing about students who have something to report about mean behavior so that we can check in on it and make sure it isn't something that is going to rise to the level of bullying, and we can stop it before it does. Students need to know who they can report to. So they need to know who are those trusted adults in school, who can they approach. And we also have to show them that it's a safe space for them to confide and speak up, and that we are listening and we will look into it. We will do something about it. And sometimes the witnesses around bullying also need that reassurance that we're going to handle the issue. We're going to handle the situation. We're going to talk about how we feel about it. And so students directly affected need reassurance of safety and repairing relationships and restoring the safety back to our classroom community. So we want to offer a safe space for them to speak up as well. And then we also want to be proactive in person and definitely proactive online. So we want to observe for gateway behaviors and warning signs. We want to build awareness of hotspots, and we call hotspots as those lightly supervised areas of the school. So the playground could be a hotspot. Maybe there's like a long hallway of lockers, and that's a hotspot in your middle school. We want to be aware of those and make sure we have supervision there as much as we can. And then we want to be proactive about online bullying, just introducing students to the risks, warning signs. And I know a lot of schools do teaching around digital responsibility and digital awareness. And I think that's so important to teach students, even at a young age, about all of those skills. And then bully proofing strategies, a way to be reactive if you do notice bullying behavior or behavior that you feel like is moving into being bullying, is just using a firm and matter-of-fact, non-punitive approach. So careful listening to uncover the full story. We want to intervene to stop what's happening. And the goal is not punishment. The goal is to ensure safety and then teaching better behavior, getting back to kindness, getting back to the rules, getting back to preserving and repairing those relationships. So we want to respond calmly and consistently. We want to be firm. Um, we want to be clear. We want to avoid negotiating. There's no wiggle room. We are not going to be mean in this classroom. We are going to be kind. And the main goal is to protect the child who was targeted. So we want to make sure that the child or the student engaging in the mean behavior is the student who is removed from the situation, not the targeted child. So there's ways of handling it where you can restore safety, restore the learning, help the other students understand that someone made a mistake and you're there to help everyone get back on track. So restore that safety and learning. And then logical consequences is a practice of responsive classroom. It's a great way to be proactive and reactive about your responses to misbehavior. And it's a way that you can restore safety and trust and really have students understand their behavior, how it wasn't following the rules, and what they can actually do to get back on track. So connecting the action and a consequence together so that students understand the impact of their behavior. So our time has flown by. This has been so amazing. There's a couple questions in the question and answer. And yeah, how do you suggest handling escalating behaviors? I think you're going to want to step in right away and stop it. And sometimes you might feel like you sound like a broken record, but you constantly have to step in and remind students that we're going to use kind words, give them a chance to try again. You might need to do targeted modeling. You know, there are things that you might need to do, but the sooner you can step in and stop, the better. Absolutely. We have, oops, let me go back. We have a book about how to bully-proof your classroom. And so that's on our Responsive Classroom website. And I just want to call your attention to some new one-day workshops we have that are around strategies to stop disruptive behavior and classroom management that works. So we hope you can join us online or in person. And we will be back together in a couple weeks to talk about bouncing back from everyday disappointment. So that'll be the topic that we dig into on October 23rd. And thank you so much for joining us. I so appreciate the time that you spent with us, and we will follow up with you with a follow-up email and some resources. And thanks, and we hope to see you again. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.